Diversity, inclusion, and equality. It's a topic that I think a lot of people are interested in. Well, not I think, a lot of people are interested in. But when you really break it down, we've kind of gone through waves as an industry, from gender to ethnic diversity to class. And it's really only been the last 3 or 4 years that the topic of neurodiversity and wiring neurodiverse talents into an organization has become maybe more apparent. In this episode with Nina Strauss, here's a little sneak peek of what we've got coming up for you.
So what I mean by that is that really that organizations make sure that they are inclusive when it comes to neurodiverse talent. And that starts basically with, of course, attracting neurodiverse talent and the interview process. To once they are onboarded, that they really can, that they feel supported and that they can basically bring in their strengths, right? And flourish, because at the moment, as this is a topic that is just starting to come up at organizations, a lot of neurodiverse people are hiding their condition. And that can be very stressful and can put a lot of stress on them. And so there is basically, of course, leaders need to be trained, right? There needs to be training around neurodiversity, but I would also say there need to be support groups for neurodiverse talent. So starting with, right, employee resource groups, but also people that can mentor and coach, right? And step in when there are those misunderstandings.
I'll be very transparent. My knowledge of neurodiverse hiring is limited. So sitting down with Nina and having a genuinely open conversation where I can ask some questions that maybe are not only on my mind, but on others, was extremely beneficial. Neurodiverse hiring is complex. There's so many nuances that we need to be considering, and in this episode, we're just scratching the surface. But it's definitely one of those surfaces we need to start scratching. So I do hope that you enjoy listening to Nina's knowledge and that you take this topic further, look for champions in your organization, look for consultancy teams to support you, and so we can create an environment that's inclusive to literally everybody. This is just that next step in a talent acquisition process. Thank you. Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a certified transformative coach with an 18-year career in talent management, who's worked closely with globally recognized brands from Oracle, Anaplan, and Personio. As a forward thinker, she actively analyzes recruitment data and metrics to make valuable recommendations, drive process improvements, and strategically align recruitment campaigns with business objectives. Passionate about building high-performing recruitment teams and highly successful teams, she's emphasized the importance of diversity and diversity hiring. And I am personally very excited to explore through her knowledge how we can wire neurodiverse talent within our organizations for the future. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, talent acquisition leader, Nina Strauss. So thank you so much for joining.
Yes, thank you very much for introducing me, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
No, I appreciate that. And like I said, it's quite a big introduction on that one. You have such a diverse and impressive career, 18 years. There's so much to uncover. Too much in this one podcast, but we'll get into the specifics of kind of neurodiverse hiring and I guess why we should be doing this in a moment. But I like to start every episode off with kind of a teaser, as it were, or kind of an introduction question. And this one for this season, it is around artificial intelligence. So more specifically, from your own perspective, how or where do you feel AI has a place in talent acquisition?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say for me, right, there's a lot of fear out there, and there are people, right, about that talent acquisition will be replaced, right, or the classic recruiter will be replaced by AI. Myself, I don't believe that, because for me, right, to attract talent, it's a sales process, right? And so as basically, as a passionate sales recruiter, I can say sales will never be replaced by AI, right? Because people buy from people. It's the same for talent acquisition. What I believe where AI can be very handy is to make, right, the TA practice more efficient. I would say in particular when it comes to industries where you have high volume recruitment and you get a high volume of application, as for example in retail sometimes, right, for certain roles. And then, for example, AI can be very handy to basically review CVs, right? That the recruiter basically has more time on their hands and basically select candidates for first screening call. And yes, I could go on, right? But
well, I was going to say, I agree 100%. I mean, I think I'm starting to see organizations use AI as a way to free up more time, which gives them more time to focus with the right candidates who are better qualified. You can nurture them better. You can go through better candidate experiences. And it's kind of just freeing up kind of time to do our job better. So we're not in that administrative process. We are in that people process. And I love the fact you use it as sales, by the way. I always find a lot of talent acquisition, and I'm one, fall into a category of it is a sales job. And then there's a large portion of people who think, no, it's not. But I love the fact that you did use that phrase, because like I said, it resonates more with how I see our jobs. So obviously the topic of today, completely different to AI. I mean, it might transpire somewhat into it. I don't know. Let's see how the conversation unfolds. But it's around wiring neurodiverse talent into an organization. So I have a few kind of questions, because as we was kind of going through the prep for this, there was a few terms that you'd used that I hadn't heard of or thought of. So I just want to kind of set the scene. So I titled this "Wire Neurodiverse Talent into an Organization." So when you say that, because that was your phrase, what does wire into a business actually mean for those who've never heard of it before?
Yes. So what I mean by that is that really that organizations make sure that they are inclusive when it comes to neurodiverse talent. And that starts basically with, of course, attracting neurodiverse talent and the interview process. To once they are onboarded, that they really can, that they feel supported and that they can basically bring in their strengths, right? And flourish, because at the moment, as this is a topic that is just starting to come up at organizations, a lot of neurodiverse people are hiding their condition. And that can be very stressful and can put a lot of stress on them, because I was talking about masking, right? They are hiding their condition and are forcing them to react in a way as, right, the mainstream is basically, right? Or they adapt to the norm of thinking. And therefore, often they can't be really at their best. And then, of course, there's a problem with retention, because those people might leave. But also, as I was saying, they can't really flourish. They can't be always at their best. And so organizations are really losing out on that, right? On those strengths they are having, but they can't really bring into, right, their daily work.
So when we actually discuss neurodiverse talent, because you're right, it's been, I think I mentioned it, 3 years or so, it's really been popular. I'd say like really the last 18 months, I'm seeing a lot more organizations take an active view. Prior to diversity, it started like with, let's be honest, I do a lot of tech, so it just, how do we get more women in tech? And that was like the big diversity drive. And then it was ethnicities and backgrounds and things like that. And now obviously it's neurodiverse. I think obviously all categories are important, but when we talk about neurodiverse talent, who are we actually referring to, or kind of how can you categorize, I guess, neurodiverse talent versus somebody who's not, if that's even the right phrase?
Yes. So what is really neurodiversity, right? So that is really referring to different ways of how the brain is working, right? In other words, different ways of receiving and also, receiving and processing information, right? People are getting from the environment. And so In neurodiversity, it's basically a way of processing that is different to the norm, right? To how the average is processing information. And so there are different conditions, or what you call as well as labels. And that's a wide variety of conditions, but starting with dyslexia, autism, ADHD, right? Then you have the Tourette syndrome, for example, which is also called a tic syndrome, dyscalculia, and there's much more, right? But what is interesting is that you have a lot of overlapping in between those conditions. So often when someone who has ADHD has also a certain degree of autism and vice versa, right? And then, of course, you have different levels within those labels of the condition. And you will see, of course, when you are working with autistic people, some that are at the very extreme, right, of the range, let's say, you won't find them in the workplace. But there are a lot of people that are in organizations, right, that have a different level, right, that are in between. Yes, so that is basically what neurodiversity is about.
I guess the overarching question that I would love to know, why is this even important? Right? Why is it important to even set our businesses up to allow for neurodiverse talents to flourish? I mean, I think I know the answer, don't get me wrong, but let's just set the scene to make it painfully obvious so everyone can follow around. But why should we even be doing this in the first place?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I think there's a lot to it, right? I think in the current environment we are in, right, we see that the society is less and less really open to being inclusive, right? That is not only limited to neurodiverse talent. But then the question is, right, do we want to live in such a world, right? And I think that, I mean, when it comes, so why actually organizations were working on that topic, I think diversity is that, of course, when you have diverse talent, it usually helps to see things from different angles and really changing things and really bring the organization forward, right? As you're saying, different ways of thinking, right, can change the world, right? And so that is exactly why it is important also to bring neurodiverse talent into organization, making sure they flourish. Yeah. Because some people are talking about they're having superpowers, and many people that are working with neurodiverse people that don't want to refer to superpowers. It's more that you will see neurodiverse people, they have basically very, very pronounced strengths and also very pronounced weaknesses, but those pronounced strengths can be incredibly valuable to an organization, right? So they are very entrepreneurial, right? And it varies on the condition as well, but very entrepreneurial, creative, loyal, caring, right? And you see, for example, a lot of famous entrepreneurs we know, they are neurodiverse, starting with Richard Branson, for example, right?
Yes. He's quite outspoken as well about it, which is good, and it kind of drives that into making it more acceptable, and it should be acceptable. Why do you think it's taken as long for organizations to recognize neurodiversity as a topic to focus on? And I guess, again, coming from the aspect of I've seen over the last 11, 12 years or so of doing recruitment, where people didn't care about diversity, and then it was, as I said, went through stages of different, almost subgroups. And I don't want this to come across as the wrong way, but I feel like I have to say it. But is this the quote unquote the flavor of diversity for now, and then we're going to move on to something else, and so on and so forth? Because I feel like neurodiverse talent has always been there, but it's taken so long for them to be recognized. I don't understand why.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of reasons to that. I would say, first of all, there was not a lot of awareness about it for many years, right? For example, also what autism means, really. And so that lacking awareness meant that many people, they were not diagnosed with their condition, right? So you have a lot of neurodiverse people that get diagnosed very late in life, but of course have been struggling a lot during their childhood. And then what is also interesting is, of course, there has been a lot of stigma around that as well, right? So people feel ashamed, and there's a reason why they are also hiding that condition. But there's also something else to it, which is called transactionality, right? Because neurodiversity is really, being neurodiverse is not only you're being neurodiverse, it's really, really being influenced by your environment, right? And so it's actually linked to all these different diversity groups we're seeing nowadays, right? ERG groups and organization, because gender plays a role, class, ethnicity, sexuality as well, right? So it's very, very, so it's very complex, I would say.
So do you think it's just timing has allowed it for it to come at this moment? And again, I have to kind of be careful, because I am also in the camp of I'm honest, I don't know too much about this topic, and I don't want to kind of go down the route of what I should or what I shouldn't, because you know what I mean. But do you think it's just a natural progression of, okay, organizations are now more receptive to the diversity in general, that coupled with more research being happening or more of an understanding, that coupled with people being diagnosed later in life are in the workforce, and there's more of this kind of inclusiveness to feel accepted to come and kind of create these processes? Because the people who are being diagnosed are probably the drivers inside the organization anyways to begin with. So do you reckon it's just kind of a combination where it's led to this moment in time opposed to 5 years ago?
Yes, I think it's right. It's basically that organizations need to respond to what is happening in society, and that is that there is more awareness, more people are getting diagnosed, and once they're diagnosed, right, they want support. And so that is, of course, something that organizations need to respond to.
So what are some of the biggest challenges organizations face when trying to, wire neurodiverse talent into their business?
Yes, I think, right, you hear a lot of, right, settings that neurodiverse people need. And that is one aspect to it. So yes, right, a lot of people struggle, for example, right, autistic people, they struggle with a lot of noise, right, when it comes to open plan offices. So you need to have, secluded areas, right, or quiet areas where people can work. There's also, right, things about lighting. So a lot of neurodiverse people, they need soft lighting, right, things like that.
Yeah.
But I think the main challenge, really, interestingly, is communication, right? That is really the main challenge, because neurodiverse people think differently. And therefore, if there is no awareness from leaders, they won't understand, right, how neurodiverse people react, right? So, for example, one example that was actually raised by a leader of a neurodiverse consultancy, right, that is helping basically organizations to deal with it. She was saying, for example, there was one autistic person, and autistic people, for example, they think literally. So the manager was saying, I want you to play the game. And this person didn't understand what playing the game means for this person, right? And so she came in as a coach, right? And it was very, very fast. She could, of course, right? Shed light on that misunderstanding. So it's what I would say communication is key. And so there is basically, of course, leaders need to be trained, right? There needs to be training around neurodiversity, but I would also say there need to be support groups for neurodiverse talent. So starting with, right, employee resource groups, but also people that can mentor and coach right? And step in when there are those misunderstandings.
Do you think it's just the leadership that needs kind of training though? Because as you say, although, let's say you're leading me and how you communicate to me, yes, it's important, but the peers on a day-to-day basis also communicating to me, and
exactly.
So it kind of has to be spread across everywhere from that point.
Yes, I think it's not only leaders. You're right? There needs to be awareness training, right, for the entire workforce, and I think, people basically being made aware that it is right in order to be inclusive. It's just important to ask, right? What do you need from me to be your best? Right? That's a very simple question to ask, right? But
So taking it out of kind of the organization in general and looking into a recruitment strategy and a recruitment process, because there's very few companies, actually, I'm just thinking, I think maybe two off the top of my head, who actively adjust their process to support neurodiverse candidates. One is an organisation in the UK called So Energy, and the other one, it is an airline, but I cannot remember now. Actually, saying that, Delivery Hero in Berlin also, I don't know if this is their intention, but they do, they have their kind of like blog system, but they have all of their hiring process, like up front, the questions you're getting asked, that sort of stuff, which, I don't know if their intention was neurodiverse support, but that dramatically helps somebody kind of on that side. But I'm kind of coming off, I'm kind of giving you some answers there. So outside of those, what adjustments, I guess, can an organization make? So say I'm an individual contributor in a talent team.
Yes.
Or I'm a leader in the talent team. I kind of want to start making these improvements for us. I want to get our business a little bit more neurodiverse. Give me kind of, I guess, the quote unquote blueprint to make that happen.
Yes, I think, right, as you were saying, there is really, at the moment, organizations are not really having a recruitment process, right, that is inclusive. And you see now some organizations, right, when you fill in the application form, they ask you if you need a setup, right, a special setup. However, I would say that is not really helping if it is limited only to that question, and people won't basically open up, right? So what I think, there's two things to it. So first of all, I think to attract neurodiverse people, it must be visible that the organization is embracing, right, neurodiversity. So, right, advocating their EAG group for neurodiversity, initiatives they're doing, and trainings, right? That must be very visible. But also, I would say, as part of the recruitment process, right, it should also be visible what support, right, can be given to neurodiverse people, right? And that is, for example, I would say, would be also important, right, that they feel that if needed, they can have a mentor or a coach that is supporting them through the process, because there's multiple setups or, right, adjustments they might need. So as you were mentioning, some might want to have the interview questions up front, or need help with preparing for some interview questions. There's a lot of people that already start with the application form, right? So they will need to help with that application form. Or as well, organizations could think of, right, let's forget about applications forms, just go for easy apply. But that will be, again, a discussion, because there needs to be certain, right, information in the ITS system and so on. But yeah, I'm sure there can be a way around that. Also, right, some neurodiverse talent, they might want to see pictures, right? So that is very helpful, showing pictures of how the organization is structured. And there's so much more to it, right? If there's any presentations they need to attend to, right? That can already be, they need maybe black on white, right? It's very difficult for many, right, to concentrate on. So if it's a light purple background, light green, right, that already helps. So there's so many things to it, but just making them understand there is a coach that understands, right, what neurodiversity is, that has been working with neurodiverse people, and they can help you through the process, right? And get you the adjustments you need. So that would be, I would say, a first step forward.
What happens if there's no coach internally, though?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it also depends on, right, how much organizations want to invest, right, into diversity at the moment. Of course, it's a difficult economic climate we are in, and I think so there are, right, you hear a lot of discussions, priorities dropping down the list. So it's not something organizations are keen on spending money on at the moment. But for example, of course, you don't necessarily need an external coach. There's excellent, right, neurodiversity consultancies that can help, right? And you could engage as well, but of course it will cost money. So
either look externally or
internally.
I guess if you've got somebody who wants to be a champion on this topic internally, upskill them, get them.
Yes.
I don't know, would there be any particular qualifications to become a neurodiverse coach?
I mean, I would say, yes, you need to, right? I would say you need to get some training. And for example, I'm at the moment, or it's at least it's helpful. I think, first of all, a neurodiverse coach, first thing they need to be inclusive, and they need to have that mindset when working with people and being able to show it, right? That's the first thing. But definitely training, of course, I would say helps, right? Because it's a very complex topic that a lot of different conditions. And so I'm at the moment, for example, I'm doing a coaching qualification in neurodiversity with Animas Coaching. And it's a program where I have really learned a lot, because you really hear from really, right, leaders within, right, the area, right, either neurodiverse coaches that have 18 years of experience, right, or basically people that have set up consultancies, right, and they basically, yes, give speeches on certain topics, and also, right, how organizations can adapt to neurodiverse talent. So it's very, very interesting. And Animas Coaching, yeah.
Perfect.
Animas is a coaching school. You can also get trained as a transformative coach at Animas. So I got trained there as well as a transformative.
I was going to say, that's where you got trained there as well. Nice.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot to kind of go through when designing any type of recruitment process, but designing it with neurodiverse talent in mind. And as you've already described at the beginning, there's many different quote unquote labels that people have or could have, and then there's different severity of them. Does it then become a recruitment process could have like 10, 15 different avenues? Does it not become too complicated for a talent team?
I wouldn't say so, right? I think if you have, at the beginning, of course, right, as always, when you need to get your mind right around new realities, of course, and it will cost money as well. So investment in terms of money and time, both. But I think once things are set up, I don't see that why it should be too complicated.
So do you create this type of process with neurodiverse talent, or do you create it based on conversations you have? I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to put my thought process into how would I, as an internal recruiter, want to go and kind of start creating this process.
Yes, I think it needs to be, it often, right, starts in organizations with one person, right, that is passionate about the topic.
The champion.
And a champion, yes. And so I think to start it off, so if I would, join a new organization as part of the, right, as talent acquisition leader, I would basically, of course, have these conversations with HR leaders, but also, right, neurodiversity ambassadors within the company.
And again, same question, I guess, comes back to what happens if we don't have these inside our business. We're going to go and look externally for consultancies, to coaches, So that's when we're obviously investing and trying to bring that knowledge in-house.
Yes, because they can also provide training, right?
Yeah.
And that would be a starting point until you build basically an internal, right, ERG group where you have ambassadors that might be, right, neurodiverse coaches or, yeah.
Because I think any topic of diversity and when there is so many different aspects to neurodiversity, you've already mentioned like soft lighting, quiet rooms, for example, but that's just one small component. But when you take a look at the entire end-to-end process, there's so many different things that it's going to touch upon. Kind of going in thinking, oh, I could do this, I could just do this based on some research. It's probably going to create a subpar candidate experience. And, it's not really the desired outcome if creating a place where neurodiverse talent can flourish is genuinely the goal. But the recruitment process is only one part, right? So the next part is let's get them actually onboarded and, let's go through the onboarding and let's get them into an environment where they can thrive. So what types of ongoing support or resources do you think are essential to offer to neurodiverse employees?
Yes, I would say definitely, right, that they have a mentor. And also, right, that there is basically that they can get access to a coach. And that is the same for their leadership, right, that are leading those people. Because, as I said, there is a lot of misunderstandings that can come up, even if there is already certain awareness.
So how do we kind of create that mentoring aspect? Again, I'm coming down the route of we might have an organization where there's a small pocket of people who are interested, maybe not as much as you would want to. Are we kind of creating a small mentoring program, then trying to build momentum that way? Or what's kind of the best examples or best experiences that you've seen around this?
Yes, I would say, right, let's first of all, right, get some champions, right? I'm sure if, right, there is basically the organization is showing the interest, right, to create, for example, an ERG group and they're showing their commitment, there will be people that will show up and show interest and some of them or many of them might be neurodiverse themselves, right? So there will be that interest. But I would say also, of course, get an expert in, right? Invest into a consultant, right? Because it's a very complex topic. So I think if you want to create a safe environment, right, you need to get expert advice, or really people that have been working with neurodiverse talent for 10 years plus.
You've used the word safe and inclusive a few times. So what are some of the key elements, I guess, that kind of create safe, inclusive environments for neurodiverse talent?
I would say a safe space, right? It's a difficult definition sometimes, but I would say independent, right? Not only limited to neurodiverse talent, right? A safe space is really somewhere where people feel comfortable to be authentic, to be their own self, speak their minds, right, without fear.
So going down that process of giving them an environment where it doesn't matter, right? Let's be honest. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your neurodiverse aspects are, but you are welcomed and we welcome you. And that's, I guess, as you say, that's driven from leadership. That's driven from kind of an awareness around it and support and encouragement. Do you have any examples from your own experience where this has worked, really well, where kind of the whole end-to-end process and kind of what made it work really well?
You mean neurodiverse? To be honest, I haven't seen it yet, right?
Oh, really?
I haven't seen. So the organizations where I have been working, right, since 2020. So not mentioning before because it was never a topic then. They haven't embraced that topic yet, right?
Oh,
wow. There was at Anaplan there was a lot of discussions around neurodiversity, and they really built out ERG groups, right, in 2021. However, there was no discussion about neurodiversity.
Do you think that's because of the timing or the lack of wanting to invest into that topic?
I think more lack of of timing, right?
Yeah.
And I think also it depends a little bit, yes, on it's interesting because sometimes at some organizations, right, they actually still limit diversity only to gender, right? How many females do we recruit, right? Yeah. When it is really much more than that. So I would say it depends on even on the industry where you are in, right? Mm. And how far they are in the process of being inclusive. I think what is nice about the tech industry, they are usually very forward thinkers, right? Very forward thinkers around topics like inclusivity and embracing, right, the latest trends, not only when it comes to technology, but also in society. So I think that's where I've seen, right, most of the initiatives around neurodiversity.
And to be fair, I'm from the tech industry, and that's where I've got a small window into it, but I get that sense as well. There's so many talent professionals that are actively pushing, how do we make our environment more inclusive, and always questioning what's always been done before to see how we can improve. But I would definitely love to know how other industries play. So if anyone does come from a different industry other than tech, then please let us know. And on top of that, if anyone has any examples where it's worked tremendously, then as well, I'd be keen to hear. But Nina, thank you so much for sharing your insights on this. It is a relatively new topic. There is still so much more to kind of evolve. And I'm sure at some point, I'd love to have you back on and kind of a year or two from down the line, see how things have evolved, because I'm sure the conversation might be slightly different at that point as well. But if people wanted to connect with you, if people want to learn more from you, where can they find you?
Yes, so I would say best way to find on LinkedIn, right? Just connect with me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you will also see, right, there's a link to my webpage and blog. So you can connect through my webpage as well.
Perfect. And I'll put both your LinkedIn and your webpage into the footnotes onto this. So if somebody's on their phone or listening to us on YouTube, whatever, they can easily click, send that connection and take it from there. But thank you so much for being a brilliant guest and for sharing your knowledge with me as well. But until next time, I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks to you. It was a great conversation, and I'm optimistic, right? In 2 years' time, that it will be a different conversation.
I'll mark it in the calendar, 2026. It's booked in already. But thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.